After my father-in-law's funeral, my jobless wife inherited $500 million. Then she dumped me. Not quietly, she sneered in my face, "You're useless now." But after the divorce, our lawyer laughed and asked her, "Did you even read the will?" She went pale, because the will didn't say what she thought. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. The rain had stopped by the time we arrived at the Holt estate, but the sky remained gray, heavy with the kind of clouds that seemed fitting for a funeral. I stood beside Mara as the last mourners filed past Henry Holt's casket, offering their condolences with practiced sympathy. Her hand rested limply in mine, cold and distant. She hadn't cried, not once. "Thank you for coming," she murmured mechanically to another well-dressed couple. They nodded, squeezed her shoulder, and moved on. I'd been married to Mara for 8 years. 8 years of walking on eggshells, of working 60-hour weeks while she slept until noon, of listening to her complain that I didn't make enough money, didn't take her to nice enough restaurants, didn't understand what it was like to grow up with real wealth. Her father, Henry, had been different. A self-made man who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. He'd always treated me with respect, asked about my work as a civil engineer, actually listened when I spoke. At family dinners, while Mara scrolled through her phone, Henry would lean across the table. "Ethan, tell me about that bridge project. How are you solving the foundation issues?" Mara would roll her eyes. "Dad, can we talk about something interesting?" But Henry would ignore her, genuinely curious about load calculations and soil compression tests. He was one of the few people in Mara's world who made me feel like I mattered. Now he was gone. The funeral service ended, and we gathered in Henry's study, a room I'd always admired, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the smell of old leather and tobacco. Attorney Richard Pembroke, a silver-haired man in an impeccable suit, stood behind Henry's massive oak desk. Mara's mother had passed away years ago, and Mara was an only child. It was just the three of us. "Thank you both for being here," Pembroke began, adjusting his reading glasses. "Henry left very specific instructions regarding his estate. Shall we proceed?" Mara straightened in her chair. This was the first time I'd seen genuine emotion on her face all day. Anticipation. Pembroke opened a leather portfolio and began reading. "To my daughter, Mara Elizabeth Holt, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, investments, and liquid assets, totaling approximately $500 million. The number hung in the air like a thunderclap. Mara's mouth fell open. Then, slowly, she began to laugh. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-throated, almost manic laugh that echoed off the study walls. $500 million, she repeated, her eyes gleaming. $500 million. Pembroke continued with various technical details, trust structures, tax implications, timeline for asset transfers. Mara wasn't listening. She was already somewhere else, already spending money that hadn't even hit her accounts yet. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. I'd never cared about Henry's money. I'd married Mara because I loved her, or at least I'd loved who I thought she was. That version of her had disappeared years ago, replaced by someone bitter and entitled, someone who blamed me for not being born wealthy. "That concludes the reading," Pembroke said, closing the portfolio. "I'll need to meet with you next week, Mara, to begin the transfer process. There are some additional conditions we'll need to discuss." "Conditions?" Mara waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever. Email me the details. I'm sure it's just legal nonsense. It's actually quite important that you... Richard, I just buried my father. I'll read through everything later. Send it to my email." Pembroke exchanged a glance with me, something unreadable in his expression. "Of course. My condolences again." That night, Mara couldn't sleep. I could hear her in Henry's study, pulling open drawers, making phone calls, her voice electric with energy. "Jessica, you won't believe this. Yes, I'm serious. 500 million? I know. We need to go to Paris. Next week. First class, obviously." I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed in the guest house where we'd been staying during Henry's final illness, and stared at my hands. These were the hands that had worked construction jobs to pay for college, that had drafted blueprints for hospitals and schools, that had held Mara when her mother died. Now they felt useless. Around 2 a.m., Mara finally came to bed. She didn't say goodnight. She turned her back to me and fell asleep within minutes, probably dreaming of designer handbags and yachts. I lay awake until dawn. 3 days later, I was in the small office I rented downtown, reviewing structural calculations for a new community center when my phone buzzed. "Mara, we need to talk. Come home." My stomach nodded. "We need to talk. had never meant anything good in our marriage. I drove back to the guest house. Mara was sitting at the kitchen table, dressed in a new outfit I'd never seen before. Probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her hair was freshly styled, her makeup perfect. She looked like she was about to attend a gala, not have a conversation with her husband. "Sit down," she said. I sat. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, but something colder. Appraisal. Like she was examining a piece of furniture she'd decided to get rid of. "Ethan, I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About us, about our marriage." "Okay," I said carefully. "We both know this hasn't been working for a long time. We're different people. We want different things. You're a nice guy, but you're not—" She paused, searching for words. "You're not what I need anymore." "Mara, let me finish." Her voice was sharp. "My father is gone. I've inherited everything. I have resources now, opportunities. I can finally live the life I was supposed to live, and I think we both know that life doesn't include a civil engineer who makes $90,000 a year." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're useless now," she continued, her eyes boring into mine. "I don't need you. I never really did, but I convinced myself I loved you, that we could build something together. But the truth is, you were always just there, safe, boring. And now that I have options, I'm done settling." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "I've already contacted a divorce attorney," she said, sliding a business card across the table. "Her name is Patricia Gomez. She's the best. You should probably get your own lawyer, but honestly, this should be simple. We'll split whatever joint assets we have, which isn't much, let's be honest, and go our separate ways." "Just like that?" I finally managed. "Just like that." She stood up. "I'll give you a week to find another place. I need you out of the guest house. I'm planning some renovations. This was your father's home, Mara, and now it's mine, every single bit of it." She walked out of the kitchen, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I heard her car start, then the sound of gravel under tires as she drove away. I sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at Patricia Gomez's business card. The next week was a blur of humiliation. Mara worked quickly and efficiently to erase me from her life. She packed up my clothes and left them in boxes outside the guest house. She called our mobile provider and removed me from her family plan. My phone went dead mid-conversation with a contractor. When I tried to use our joint credit card to buy gas, it was declined. She'd already canceled it. I called her. "Mara, I need access to our account, too." "There is no our account anymore, Ethan. I closed it. Whatever was in there is mine now. You should have your own money." "I do have my own money, but you can't just—" "Actually, I can. Talk to your lawyer." Click. I found a small studio apartment in a cheaper part of town, the kind of place I hadn't lived in since graduate school. One room, a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom with questionable plumbing. I moved in with 2 suitcases and a box of books. My friends called, concerned. "Man, are you okay?" Derek asked. We'd been friends since college, both engineers. "I heard about the divorce." "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine. Want to grab a beer?" "Not tonight. I've got work to catch up on." "Ethan, I'm okay, Derek. Really." But I wasn't okay. I was numb. I'd spent 8 years of my life with someone who'd thrown me away the moment she didn't need me anymore. 8 years of supporting her, defending her to my friends who said she was spoiled, convincing myself that underneath the complaints and the materialism, there was still the girl I'd fallen in love with in college. That girl didn't exist. Maybe she never had. 2 weeks after the funeral, Mara threw a party at the main estate. I heard about it from Derek, who heard about it from someone who knew someone who'd been invited. Apparently, Mara had hired event planners, caterers, a DJ. The theme was New Beginnings. "She's telling everyone she upgraded her life," Derek said on the phone, disgust clear in his voice. She actually used those words. Said she dumped the dead weight. I closed my eyes. "It's fine." "It's not fine. She's a—" "Derek, I appreciate it, but I don't want to talk about Mara anymore. I just want to move on." "You're a better man than me. I'd be hiring a skywriter to tell the world what a piece of work she is. What's the point? The divorce will be final soon, and I'll never have to think about her again." That thought should have brought relief. Instead, it just made me feel hollow. The divorce proceedings were quick and clinical. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Carol Sanders, met with me once to review our assets. "You both came into the marriage with separate finances," she explained. "The joint account had about $12,000, which she emptied. We can fight for half of that. The car is in your name. The furniture was mostly hers. You have your 401k, she has—" Well, she has considerably more than that. I don't want to fight, I said. I just want it over. Ethan, you're entitled to... I know what I'm entitled to. I don't want her money. I never did. Carol studied me for a long moment. You're unusual. Most people in your position would be out for blood. I'm tired. I just want to move on with my life. All right. I'll draw up the papers. You're making this very easy. I signed everything without reading it carefully. Property division, asset allocation, all the legal language that essentially said, Mara gets everything, Ethan gets out. Well, fine by me. The final meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at Pembroke's office. The same attorney who'd read Henry's will. Apparently he was handling some aspect of the estate that required both of us to be present to complete the divorce. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing one of my 3 work suits. The reception area was elegant, all dark wood and expensive art. I sat on a leather couch that probably cost more than my car and tried to calm my racing heart. I just wanted this over. At exactly 9 a.m., the elevator dinged, and Mara stepped out. I barely recognized her. She wore enormous sunglasses despite being indoors, a white designer pantsuit that probably cost 5 figures, and carried a handbag I'd seen in a magazine once, something French, with a waiting list measured in years. Diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. She looked like a person who'd never known struggle, never known what it meant to check a bank account nervously before buying groceries. She didn't acknowledge me, just swept past and told the receptionist, Mara Holt, I'm expected. The receptionist smiled. Of course, Ms. Holt. Mr. Pembroke is ready for you both. Conference room B. Both. Mara's head swiveled toward me, as if noticing me for the first time. Oh, you're here. Apparently I have to be. Well, this shouldn't take long. I have lunch at 12:30. We walked to the conference room in silence. Pembroke was already there, seated at the head of a long mahogany table. Carol Sanders, my attorney, sat to his right. Patricia Gomez, Mara's attorney, a severe woman in a power suit, sat to his left. Thank you both for coming, Pembroke said. Please sit. Mara took off her sunglasses, revealing expertly applied makeup and eyes that held no warmth. She sat down with practiced grace. I took the seat across from her. Let's make this quick, Richard, Mara said, checking her phone. I assume we're just signing final papers? Not exactly, Pembroke said. Something in his tone made me look up. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something important. What do you mean, not exactly? Mara asked, irritation creeping into her voice. Mara, Pembroke said slowly, did you actually read your father's will, the complete document I sent you? Of course I read it. $500 million. Pretty straightforward. Did you read all 47 pages? Mara blinked. 47 pages? You sent me like a summary, a few pages. That was the summary. The complete will, with all conditions and stipulations, is 47 pages. I sent it to you 3 times. I also called you twice to schedule a meeting to review it in detail. Mara's lawyer, Patricia, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Richard, what's this about? Pembroke opened a leather folder and removed a thick document. He flipped to a page marked with a yellow tab. I'd like to read Clause 7, Section 3. The room went silent. Pembroke cleared his throat and began to read. Beneficiary Mara Elizabeth Holt shall receive the entirety of the Holt estate, valued at approximately $500 million, only upon satisfying the following condition. Said beneficiary must remain legally married to Ethan James Holt for a continuous period of no less than 10 years following the death of testator Henry Marcus Holt. Should the marriage end in divorce, separation, or annulment during this 10-year period, whether initiated by beneficiary or by mutual agreement, the entire estate shall immediately and irrevocably transfer to Ethan James Holt, who shall be recognized as the sole beneficiary and heir to all Holt assets, properties, and holdings. The words seemed to echo in the conference room. I felt my brain short-circuit. I must have misheard. That couldn't be? What? Mara's voice was barely a whisper. Pembroke looked at her over his reading glasses. Your father left his entire fortune to you, but only if you stayed married to Ethan for 10 years after his death. If you divorce before that time, everything goes to Ethan instead. No. Mara stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. No, that's not real. Show me. Pembroke turned the document toward her. She snatched it, her perfectly manicured hands shaking as she scanned the page. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. This is insane, Mara said, her voice rising. This has to be a mistake. My father wouldn't... Why would he... Your father, Pembroke said quietly, came to see me 6 months before he died. He knew his time was limited. He told me he was worried about you, Mara. He said you'd never learned the value of money, never understood what it took to build something meaningful. He wanted to protect you from yourself. Protect me? By doing this? He believed Ethan was a good man, someone with integrity. He wanted to ensure you had someone stable in your life, someone who wasn't interested in the fortune. Mara's face had gone from tan to pale to flushed red. You're lying. This document is fake. Patricia, tell me this is fake. Patricia Gomez had been reading over Mara's shoulder. Now she sat down heavily. It's legitimate. I can see the notarization, the witnesses, the filing date. This is a legal will. Then we'll fight it. We'll say he wasn't in his right mind. Your father, Pembroke interrupted, anticipated that response. He submitted to a full psychological evaluation 1 week after executing this will. 3 separate doctors certified his complete mental competence. He was tested for cognitive impairment, undue influence, and coercion. He passed everything with flying colors. This will is unbreakable, Mara. Mara turned to me, her eyes wild. You knew. You knew about this, didn't you? This is why you didn't fight the divorce, why you made it so easy. You were planning this the whole time. I found my voice. I had no idea. Liar! She slammed her hands on the table. You manipulated him. You manipulated my father into writing this. Ethan, Pembroke said calmly, was never informed of this clause. Your father specifically requested that we not tell him. He said, and I quote, Ethan would try to talk me out of it. He'd say it's not fair to Mara. That's exactly why he deserves this protection. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. Henry wanted you to make your own choices, Mara, Pembroke continued. If you loved Ethan, if you valued your marriage, then the clause would never matter. You'd stay together, reach the 10-year mark, and the inheritance would be yours. The clause was only relevant if you chose to leave. I didn't know, Mara stammered. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Ethan, I didn't know. I made a mistake. We can fix this. We can... The divorce is already filed. Carol Sanders spoke for the first time, her voice matter of fact. You initiated it. You removed Ethan from all joint accounts, ended his phone service, and had him removed from your property. The court date is next month. Then we'll cancel it. We'll withdraw the filing. It doesn't matter, Pembroke said. Clause 7, Section 3, Subsection B states that any attempt to reconcile after divorce proceedings have been initiated will not satisfy the terms of the will. Your father foresaw that possibility, too. Mara's legs seemed to give out. She sank into her chair, the document sliding from her fingers onto the table. 10 years, she whispered. I just had to wait 10 years. The conference room was silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Finally, Mara looked up at me. Tears, real tears, streamed down her face, ruining her makeup. Ethan, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said. I was overwhelmed. I wasn't thinking clearly. You told me I was useless, I said quietly. You said I was dead weight. You said you were done settling. I didn't mean it. I was just upset about Dad and the money, and please, there has to be a way to fix this. I'll do anything. We can start over, we can... Mara, Pembroke said gently. There's nothing to fix. The will is clear. You chose to divorce Ethan before the 10-year period elapsed. The estate now transfers to him. He slid another document across the table, this one toward me. Ethan, this is the transfer confirmation. Once you sign this, you become the sole beneficiary of the Holt estate. $500 million in assets, properties, and investments. I'll need to schedule time with you to review everything in detail, but the short version is, it's yours. I stared at the document. My name, Ethan James Holt, sole beneficiary. This couldn't be real. Mr. Holt, Pembroke prompted. I know this is a shock, but I'll need your signature. I picked up the pen with numb fingers. The weight of it seemed immense, like I was signing away one life and stepping into another. Ethan, wait. Mara stood again, nearly knocking over her chair. Please, just wait. Think about this. Think about what we had, what we could have again. I know I screwed up, but people make mistakes. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy. I'll change. You never bothered to read the will, I said, looking up at her. You had 3 weeks, multiple emails, phone calls. You couldn't be bothered because you assumed you knew everything. You assumed it didn't matter. I know I should have... Your father knew you, Mara. He knew exactly who you were and who I was, and he made his choice. I signed the document. Mara let out a sound that was half sob, half wail. She collapsed back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Patricia Gomez stood. I think we're done here. Mara, I'm so sorry. If you want to explore any legal options... There are no legal options, Pembroke said firmly. The will is ironclad. I made sure of it. I stood, my legs shaky. Thank you, Mr. Pembroke. Carol, could we schedule a time to... Of course, Carol said, also standing. I'll call you tomorrow. I walked toward the door. Ethan! I turned. Mara was on her feet again, mascara running down her cheeks, no longer looking like the polished socialite who'd walked in. She looked lost, broken. My father? What did he say about me when he made this will? I looked at Pembroke. He hesitated, then spoke softly. He said, I love my daughter, but I've failed her. I gave her everything and taught her nothing. Ethan is the only person in her life who never wanted anything from her except her love. If she can't see that, then she doesn't deserve the fortune. But he does. He's earned it by being a good man, and good men are rarer than money. Mara's face crumpled. She sank back down, shoulders shaking with sobs. I left the conference room, left Patricia trying to comfort her client, left Pembroke organizing papers with quiet efficiency. Carol walked me to the elevator. You okay? She asked. I don't know what I am. Well, you're rich. That's what you are. $500 million rich. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. Call me tomorrow, Carol said. We have a lot to discuss. The doors closed. I drove to a park near my apartment, a small green space with a pond where I sometimes went to think. I sat on a bench, watching ducks paddle across the water, and tried to process what had just happened. My phone rang. The estate manager, according to the caller ID. Mr. Holt, this is Margaret Chen from Holt Estate Management. Mr. Pembroke informed me of the transfer. I wanted to reach out and introduce myself. I've been managing the properties and investments for Mr. Henry Holt for 15 years, and I'm prepared to continue in that capacity for you. Would you be available to meet this week to discuss the portfolio? Yes. Yes, I suppose so. Wonderful. How is Thursday at 10 a.m.? Thursday is fine. Excellent. I'll send you a calendar invitation. And Mr. Holt, may I say, Henry spoke very highly of you. I'm glad his estate is in your hands. Thank you, Margaret. I hung up and stared at my phone. The same phone that had been disconnected 2 weeks ago because Mara had removed me from her plan. Now I was the one receiving calls about estate management. The irony was almost painful. A text came through from Derek. Heard something crazy from a friend of a friend. Call me when you can. News traveled fast in Mara's social circle. By tomorrow, everyone would know. I thought about Henry, sitting in his study, making plans for after he was gone, making sure his daughter was protected, even from herself, making sure I was taken care of, even though I'd never asked for anything. Thank you, I whispered to the air, to wherever Henry was now. I won't waste it. 3 days later, I moved into one of Henry's properties, not the main estate, but a smaller home about 20 minutes away. 3 bedrooms, a study, a workshop in the garage, the kind of place I'd always dreamed of owning. Margaret Chen had suggested it. Start here, she'd said. Get your footing. The estate will still be there when you're ready. The house was furnished, but felt empty. I walked through rooms that echoed with my footsteps, trying to imagine a life here. A life that wasn't defined by Mara's constant dissatisfaction or my constant struggle to keep up. I stood in the study, smaller than Henry's, but comfortable, and looked at a photo on the wall. Henry and me, at a construction site 3 years ago. He'd insisted on visiting one of my projects, wanted to see what I did all day. We wore matching hard hats and grinned at the camera. I hope I make you proud, I said to the photo. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello? Mr. Holt, this is David Corrigan. I'm a reporter with the Metro Observer. I was hoping to get a comment about your inheritance of the Holt estate. There are a lot of questions about I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. I ignored it. Text messages started coming in. Old college friends, former coworkers, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very interested in how I was doing. I turned off my phone. 1 month later, I walked into the courthouse for what should have been the final divorce hearing. Carol Sanders met me outside. There's been a complication. What kind of complication? Mara's attorney filed a motion to dismiss the divorce proceedings. They're claiming emotional distress, claiming Mara wasn't in her right mind when she initiated the divorce, claiming a lot of things. Can they do that? They can try. The judge will hear arguments this morning. We entered the courtroom. Mara was already there with Patricia Gomez, and she looked terrible. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No designer clothes today, just a plain gray dress. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Hope? Desperation? Regret? The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the motion with obvious skepticism. Ms. Gomez, you're arguing that your client was emotionally compromised when she filed for divorce? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Holt had just lost her father. She was grieving, not thinking clearly. She made a rash decision that she deeply regrets. And yet, the judge said, according to these documents, your client not only filed for divorce, but also took numerous actions to separate her life from Mr. Holt's. Closed joint accounts, canceled shared services, evicted him from their shared residence. These don't seem like the actions of someone who wasn't thinking clearly. These seem quite calculated. Your Honor, grief manifests in different ways. Ms. Gomez, I've read the complete file. I've also read Mr. Holt's will and the conditional clause regarding the inheritance. Your client filed for divorce believing she would inherit $500 million. She then discovered that divorcing Mr. Holt meant losing that inheritance. Now she wants to undo the divorce. This court is not in the business of helping people avoid the consequences of their own choices. But, Your Honor, motion denied. The divorce will proceed as scheduled. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes to finalize. The gavel came down. Mara burst into tears. Patricia tried to comfort her, but Mara pushed her away and stumbled out of the courtroom. Well, Carol said quietly, that's that. 15 minutes later, the divorce was final. I signed papers, answered the judge's questions, and suddenly, officially, I was no longer married. I walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. The sky was blue, cloudless, the kind of day that felt like a beginning. Ethan. I turned. Mara stood near the courthouse steps, alone. She'd composed herself, but her eyes were red. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I should have said no, should have kept walking, but something in her voice made me stop. Okay. We moved away from the courthouse entrance to a quiet corner of the grounds. I'm not going to ask you to give it back, Mara said. The money, I know that's not. I know you've probably heard enough begging. I have, she nodded. I just wanted to say, my father was right. About you, about me, about everything. A breeze rustled the trees above us. I spent my whole life thinking I deserved things because of who my father was, she continued. I never worked for anything, never built anything. I just waited around for life to give me what I thought I was owed, and when you were there, being steady and kind and, God, just present, I convinced myself you were the problem, that you were holding me back from some better version of my life. Mara, let me finish, please. She took a shaky breath. These past few weeks, I've had a lot of time to think, to really look at who I am, and I don't like what I see. I was cruel to you. I said horrible things. I threw away someone who actually cared about me because I thought money mattered more. Your father knew, I said quietly. He knew exactly what would happen. Yeah, he did. A sad smile crossed her face. He tried to teach me, when I was younger. Tried to get me to work in the company to understand where wealth comes from, but I didn't want to hear it. I just wanted the results without the work. We stood in silence for a moment. I'm going to get a job, Mara said suddenly. A real job. Maybe I'll go back to school. I don't know yet. But I can't keep being this. She gestured at herself. I need to figure out who I am without my father's money, who I should have been all along. I think that's good. Will you? She hesitated. Will you hate me for the rest of your life? I thought about that. About 8 years of marriage, both the good early days and the bitter later ones. About Henry's faith in me. About second chances and forgiveness. No, I said finally. I won't hate you, but I won't forget either. That's fair. She wiped her eyes. Goodbye, Ethan. I hope you do something good with it. The money. Something Dad would be proud of. I will. She walked away, down the courthouse steps toward a waiting car. Not a limo or a luxury vehicle, just a regular sedan. She got in and drove away. I stood there for a long time, watching the traffic, feeling the sun on my face. My phone buzzed. Margaret Chen. Mr. Holt, I have the final numbers for the estate transfer. When would you like to meet to discuss your plans for the foundation? The foundation? Yes, sir. Henry had been planning a charitable foundation for years, but never had time to establish it before he became ill. I assumed you'd want to continue that work. I smiled. Actually, Margaret, I'd like to do exactly that. When can we start? 6 months later. The Henry Holt Foundation for Engineering Education launched on what would have been Henry's 75th birthday. We funded scholarships for first-generation college students studying civil engineering. We supported infrastructure projects in underserved communities. We created apprenticeship programs to connect students with real-world projects. I still worked, still designed bridges and buildings and community centers. But now I could take on projects that mattered, even if they didn't pay much. I could say yes to the nonprofit clinic that needed structural assessments, to the school district that wanted to build a new gymnasium but was short on funds. Derek came over one Saturday, helped me set up my workshop in the garage. We were installing a new table saw when he said, "You know people call you lucky, right? Won the lottery, they say." "I know. Does it bother you?" I tightened a bolt, considering. Sometimes. But then I remember I was married to Mara for 8 years. I worked 60-hour weeks. I did everything I could to make her happy. If that's what it took to get here, I shrugged. I don't think luck is the right word. "No," Derek agreed. "No, I don't suppose it is." Later that evening, I sat in Henry's study, my study now, and looked at the photo of us at the construction site. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Mr. Holt, this is Mara." I hadn't heard her voice since the courthouse. "I'm calling because I wanted you to know I got a job. It's just entry-level marketing at a small firm. But it's something I earned, something that's mine." "That's great, Mara. Really. I also wanted to thank you for the foundation. My dad would have loved it. He always said you were the kind of person who would do something meaningful. He gave me the opportunity. He gave you what you deserved." A pause. "I won't call again. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm glad. Take care of yourself, Mara." "You too, Ethan. You too." The line went dead. I set down the phone and looked around the study, at the bookshelves filled with engineering texts and biographies of builders, at the blueprints on the wall for the Foundation's first major project, a community center in the neighborhood where I'd grown up. Henry had said good men are rarer than money. I didn't know if I was good, but I was going to try to be worth his faith. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow I had meetings about the new scholarship program, site visits for 3 different projects, and a lunch with Margaret to discuss expanding the Foundation's reach. Tomorrow I would keep building, but tonight I sat in the quiet study and allowed myself to feel what I hadn't let myself feel during all the chaos of divorce and inheritance and sudden wealth. Relief. Not because of the money, though, that was part of it. Relief because I was finally free to be exactly who I'd always been. Someone who worked hard, built things that mattered, and tried to leave the world a little better than he found it. Henry had seen that in me when no one else did. Not even me, sometimes. "I won't let you down," I promised the photo on the wall, and I meant it. The gala for the Henry Holt Foundation's 3rd anniversary was everything I'd never wanted. Tuxedos, champagne, speeches, and a ballroom full of donors who'd come as much to network as to support the cause. But Margaret had insisted. "People need to see the impact," she'd said. "We've funded 200 scholarships, built 12 community centers, and created partnerships with 30 universities. That deserves celebration." So here I was, adjusting my bow tie for the 100th time while Margaret reviewed the evening's schedule. "You'll give your remarks at 8:30 after dinner. Keep it under 10 minutes. People's attention spans at these things are—" "Margaret, I've done public speaking before." "I know, but—" She paused, her expression softening. "This is important. Henry's legacy is important. I just want everything to be perfect." I put a hand on her shoulder. "It will be, thanks to you." She smiled, blinking back tears. "He'd be so proud, you know, of everything you've built." "We've built," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." The ballroom doors opened, and guests began filtering in. I recognized faces from the business community, from academia, from local government, people Henry had known, people who respected what he'd built, and in the corner, talking with a group of scholarship recipients, I saw someone I hadn't expected. Mara. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She was listening intently to a young woman, one of our scholars, who was animatedly explaining something, hands moving expressively. Margaret followed my gaze. "She called last week, asked if she could attend. I told her I'd have to ask you." "You didn't ask me." "I know. I made an executive decision. She's been volunteering with one of our partner organizations for the past year, working with at-risk youth. Apparently she's quite good at it." I watched Mara laugh at something the student said, genuine warmth in her expression. She looked different, not just older, but more present somehow, more real. "She's changed," Margaret said quietly. "I've seen it myself. She comes to our office sometimes, asking about volunteer opportunities, ways she can help. She never asks for recognition or tries to make it about herself. She just helps." "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. The speeches started after dinner. A university dean talked about the impact of our scholarships. A city councilwoman discussed the community centers. A former scholar, now a practicing civil engineer, shared how the foundation had changed her life. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, looking out at 200 faces, and felt a moment of vertigo. 3 years ago, I'd been living in a studio apartment, signing divorce papers, trying to figure out how my life had fallen apart. Now I was here. Thank you all for coming, I began. 3 years ago, when Margaret first suggested we formalize the Henry Holt Foundation, I was terrified. I'm an engineer, not a philanthropist. I build bridges, not organizations. But Margaret reminded me that building is building, whether it's a physical structure or a community program. Scattered laughter. Henry Holt was my father-in-law, but more than that, he was my mentor. He saw potential in me that I didn't always see in myself. He believed that good people, given the right opportunities, could create meaningful change. The foundation exists because of that belief. I paused, finding my rhythm. Tonight, we're celebrating 3 years of work. 200 scholarships, 12 community centers, 30 university partnerships. Those are impressive numbers. But the numbers aren't what matter. What matters are the stories behind them. I gestured to the former scholar who'd spoken earlier. What matters is Maria, who grew up in foster care and is now designing earthquake-resistant buildings in California. What matters is James, who was the first person in his family to attend college and is now teaching engineering to high school students in his hometown. What matters is every single person in this room who believes that opportunity shouldn't depend on circumstances of birth. The room was silent, attentive. Henry once told me that wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with what you have. He spent his life building a company, creating jobs, supporting his community. He could have left his fortune to gather interest in a bank account. Instead, he created an opportunity for it to keep building, keep growing, keep creating opportunities for others. I looked directly at Margaret. I'm grateful every day that I get to be a steward of his vision, and I'm grateful to everyone here who supports this work. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. I walked back to my table, hands shaking slightly. Derek clapped me on the shoulder. Nice speech. Very humble. I meant every word. I know you did. That's why it worked. Later, after most guests had left, I found myself on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights sprawled out below. Millions of lives, millions of stories. Ethan? I turned. Mara stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Mind if I join you? Sure. She handed me a glass and leaned against the railing, careful to maintain some distance between us. Your speech was beautiful, she said. Thanks. I mean it. The foundation, what you've built, it's exactly what Dad would have wanted. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Margaret said you've been volunteering, I said finally. Mara nodded. With an organization that provides mentorship to kids from low-income families. I started 2 years ago, just looking for something to do, something that mattered. Turns out I'm actually decent at it. I'm glad you found something meaningful. Me too. She took a sip of champagne. I think about that day in the courthouse a lot. What I said about trying to be better. I wasn't sure I could do it, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. She looked at me, her expression serious. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you think people can really change? Not superficially, but fundamentally? I considered the question. I think people can grow, can recognize their mistakes and choose differently. Whether that's the same as change? I shrugged. I don't know. Fair answer. She smiled sadly. I was horrible to you for years. And the worst part is, I thought I was justified. I thought I deserved more, better, different. I blamed you for things that were never your fault. Mara, let me finish. Please. I've been practicing this. She took a breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I lost, who you were, who I should have been. I appreciate that. I also wanted you to know that I'm proud of you, of what you've accomplished. Dad was right to trust you with his legacy. You've honored it better than I ever could have. There was something final in her tone, like she was closing a chapter. What will you do now? I asked. Keep working, keep volunteering. I'm actually thinking about going back to school. Social work, maybe. I want to help people who are struggling, who feel lost, like I was. That sounds perfect for you. She smiled, and for the first time in our entire relationship, it was a smile without calculation or expectation, just genuine warmth. Thank you, Ethan, for this conversation, for not hating me. I never hated you. I know. That's what makes you remarkable. She set down her glass. I should go, but I'm glad we talked. She walked back inside, leaving me alone on the balcony. I thought about Henry, about the will, about the impossible situation he'd created that had somehow led to this moment. He'd known. Somehow he'd known exactly what would happen, exactly what everyone needed. Mara needed to lose everything to find herself, and I needed to be trusted with something meaningful to understand my own worth. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. Thank you, I whispered to the night, to Henry, to whatever force had brought me through the last 3 years. Thank you for believing in me. 5 years after the funeral. The dedication ceremony for the Henry Holt Center for Engineering Excellence was scheduled for 10 a.m., but I arrived an hour early. I wanted time alone with the building before it filled with people and speeches and celebration. It was our most ambitious project yet, a 40,000 square foot facility that combined classroom space, design labs, workshop areas, and a small museum dedicated to the history of civil engineering. We'd partnered with 3 universities and 2 major construction firms. The building itself was a teaching tool designed to demonstrate sustainable engineering practices. I walked through the empty halls, my footsteps echoing off polished floors. Every classroom had state-of-the-art equipment. Every lab was designed for hands-on learning. Every detail reflected Henry's belief that education was the foundation of everything. It's beautiful. I turned. Margaret stood in the doorway, smiling. When did you get here? About 10 minutes ago. I figured you'd want some time alone. She joined me, looking around at the sun-filled atrium. He would have loved this. Absolutely loved it. I hope so. I know so. She pulled out her phone. I wanted to show you something. I found it last week while organizing old files. She handed me the phone. On the screen was a handwritten letter, Henry's distinctive scrawl. Margaret, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Ethan is trying to figure out what to do with $500 million. Help him, please. He's going to be overwhelmed, maybe even scared. He's going to want to give it all away immediately, because he's never cared about money. Don't let him do that. Not yet. Make him think. Make him plan. Make him understand that wealth isn't just about giving money away. It's about creating systems that keep giving long after you're gone. Ethan is the kind of person who builds things that last. Help him build something that will outlast both of us. He's going to do remarkable things, Margaret. I know it. I just wish I could be there to see it. Henry. I read it twice, then handed back the phone, not trusting my voice. He saw it all, Margaret said softly. The foundation, the community centers, this building. He knew you'd create something meaningful. He had more faith in me than I had in myself. That's what good mentors do. The ceremony was perfect. Speeches from university presidents, from scholarship recipients, from community leaders. The ribbon cutting felt surreal. Me and Derek and Margaret and a dozen students, all holding oversized scissors, everyone laughing. Afterwards, during the reception, a young man approached me, maybe 22, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, clearly nervous. Mr. Holt, I'm Jason Reeves. I was one of the first Foundation scholars. Jason, of course I remember. You're at State University, right? Structural engineering? Yes, sir. I graduate next month. He paused, gathering courage. I wanted to thank you. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat after my dad left. I never thought I'd go to college. The scholarship didn't just pay for school. It showed me that someone believed I could do this, that I belonged here. You earned it, Jason. The scholarship just opened a door. You walked through it. I know, but... He struggled with the words. People like me, we don't usually get doors. We get walls. You helped knock down a wall, so thank you. He shook my hand and disappeared back into the crowd. Derek appeared beside me. That never gets old, does it? What? The thank yous. Seeing what you've built, actually helping people. No, I admitted. It doesn't. We stood together, watching students and faculty explore the new building, excited voices echoing off the walls. You know what I think about sometimes, Derek said. That day you called me from your crappy studio apartment. You sounded so defeated, like everything had fallen apart. I remember. If someone had told us then that 5 years later you'd be dedicating a $40 million engineering center, he shook his head. I wouldn't have believed it. I still don't believe it sometimes. Well, believe it, because this is real, and it's yours. You built this. 10 years after Henry's death. The 10-year anniversary of Henry's passing fell on a Tuesday. I took the day off. No meetings, no site visits, no calls, and drove to the cemetery. His grave was well maintained, surrounded by oak trees, peaceful. I sat on the bench nearby and just breathed. A decade. In that time, the foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. 500 scholarships funded, 23 community centers built, partnerships with 47 universities, a youth mentorship program serving 2,000 kids annually. We'd recently endowed 3 permanent faculty positions, the Henry Holt chairs in civil engineering at major universities. The wealth Henry had left me was still growing, despite everything we'd given away. Margaret had taught me that lesson well. Smart investing and strategic philanthropy weren't contradictory. They were complementary. "I hope I made you proud," I said to the gravestone. "I tried to honor what you believed about me." "He'd be proud." I turned. Mara stood a few feet away, holding flowers. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I'll come back later." "It's okay. Stay." She placed the flowers on Henry's grave, then sat on the other end of the bench. 10 years, she said. "Yeah. I finished my master's degree last month. Social work. I'm working with foster kids now, helping them navigate the system." "That's wonderful, Mara, really. It's where I'm supposed to be, I think, where I should have been all along." She paused. "I heard about the new engineering center at MIT, the Holt Center for Sustainable Design. Margaret deserves recognition. She's been as much a part of this as I have. That was generous of you. But then, you've always been generous." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I think about that clause in the will sometimes. 10 years. If I'd just waited, just stayed." "Then you never would have found yourself," I said gently. "You needed to lose everything to figure out who you really were." "I know. Doesn't make it easier, though." She looked at her father's grave. "I think Dad knew that, too. The clause wasn't really about the money. It was about forcing me to face myself. He loved you. He just wanted you to be better than you thought you could be. He got his wish, just not the way anyone expected." She stood, brushing off her jeans. "I should go, but I'm glad we ran into each other. The work you're doing, it matters, Ethan. It really matters." "Thanks, Mara." She walked away, leaving me alone with Henry's grave and my thoughts. I thought about the journey, from that conference room where Pembroke read the will, to the studio apartment, to the foundation, to this moment, a decade of building, growing, learning. I thought about Mara's transformation, her hard work to become someone she could respect. I thought about the hundreds of students whose lives had changed because one man had believed in me. "The money was never what mattered," I said to Henry's grave. "You knew that. It was about trust, about believing I could build something meaningful. Thank you for that gift, for trusting me with your legacy." A breeze rustled the oak leaves above me. I sat there for another hour, remembering, reflecting, planning. There was more work to do, always more work, more students to help, more programs to build, more opportunities to create. But for this moment, I just sat in the quiet, grateful for a man who'd seen potential in me that I hadn't seen in myself, grateful for a decade of purpose, grateful for a life spent building things that mattered. The sun was setting when I finally stood to leave. I placed my hand on Henry's gravestone one last time. "See you next year," I said. And I meant it.